Alrighty, well, it's 2 o'clock now. So yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is Phil Grigsby here with the Weather Service. It's going to be a pretty short and sweet briefing because we really don't see any significant impacts as far as like rainfall or temperatures or anything like that. So that's good news. The biggest things to talk about are really going to be on the marine side of the house. The main concern is we're going to have some pretty decent easterly winds pick up, especially starting tomorrow and really into the weekend. And they're going to be blowing about 20 to 25 miles offshore. So with that east wind pushing some swell onshore, we're going to have some minor coastal flooding issues, mainly during high tide for some of our east-facing shores in Mississippi and Louisiana. So that's going to be our typical problem areas like Waveland, some of the low-lying roads there, areas in Lower St. Bernard Parish, Lower Plaquemines, maybe portions of Eastern Orleans, like over towards Venetian Isles and through the Wrigley's area. So those are going to be kind of the main areas of concern. We're not really seeing anything that's going to be more than nuisance flooding at this point, about a foot above, and I'll show some of the charts that we have in some later slides. The winds are also going to cause hazardous boating conditions, especially for the open Gulf waters. It actually looks like in the sounds and lakes, things will be a little more protected. The winds may be closer to 15 to 20 miles an hour in those areas, and so the winds aren't going to be, or the waves aren't going to be quite as bad, but it's still going to be rough boating conditions no matter where you're at. Not going to be a great weekend to go out on any type of smaller boat. And the good news is there's no tropical impacts expected over the next 7 days. So as far as the threat outlook goes, I just kind of did this quick little matrix here. So for coastal flooding, it's really the lowest level risk, very nuisance type flooding during high tide cycles, really Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And the high tide is going to be in that midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning time frame. So that's when we're really expecting the biggest impacts to occur during the middle of the night, which is good news because there's not going to be as many people out and about on the roads at that time. The marine impacts really going to peak Saturday and Sunday. I went up a little bit higher on that one because we could have some winds, especially offshore. For anybody that's going out, any shrimpers or anything like that, they're going to encounter some pretty rough conditions out there. So especially if there's anybody on the Coast Guard, just kind of be aware of that there may be some issues that you'll have to deal with this weekend if you have any vessels that run into any trouble out there. As far as the tropical outlook goes, you can see there's a couple of areas that are highlighted, low chances of development in the Western Caribbean and near the Leeward Islands. The good news is all of the guidance that we're looking at indicates that the stuff in the Western Caribbean would just kind of drift over into the Central American, like Belize, Yucatan, Nicaragua, those areas. Not really going to be a big impact for us. And the stuff in the Leeward Islands is going to, if it does develop, would be picked up and shifted out into the open Atlantic because we have these frontal systems that have been coming through, and that's going to help push everything away from us. So here's the main impact as far as any concerns go. So this is for Waveland, and this is the tide forecast, and I actually added in a little red bar there where you can see where the flood stage is. So we're expecting really minor coastal flooding during the high tide cycles. Like I said, again, midnight to 1 a.m. time frame is really kind of going to be the peak time where you're going to see these issues. Generally about a foot above ground level in Waveland. So some of the low-lying roads that typically see some issues are going to see those again. I don't think that we would see anything that we would consider impassable in Waveland, but there's definitely going to be some water on some of those low-lying roads and some of those more flood-prone neighborhoods. So just a heads up if there's anybody from Hancock that's listening. It's definitely be a concern this weekend. And then I threw in Shell Beach as well. Again, I have the red line there showing the flood stage. And you can see actually we had a little bit of higher tides when we had the cold front go through that kind of pushed some water in from the north side of Lake Borgne down to the south side. We are going to see a little bit of coastal flooding tonight as well, but only about a half a foot. And really, that's just really not going to have a big impact. That really won't even be enough to put water on roads. However, as we get into especially Sunday and into Monday, we get those tide levels that are going to be getting closer to a foot above normal on the graph there, and that's where you could have some low-lying roads that do have some issues over there as well. So that's really what we're looking at is some very minor nuisance type flooding issues for our east-facing shores. So just be prepared for that this weekend. And the other thing I did want to throw in, I didn't include a slide We had our drought monitor update today, and we are in moderate drought conditions for Southwest Mississippi now. We haven't had any appreciable rain for the last few weeks, and it doesn't look like we're going to have any rain next week either. So we expect to see these drought conditions persist and potentially get a little bit worse until we actually get some type of decent storm system to roll through. But in the foreseeable future, at least for the next 10 days or so, we don't see any rain in the forecast for our area. So we do expect to see the drought conditions to worsen. I know there was a wildfire in Harrison County that they're still fighting. And so if we do get some more stronger windy days and we have lower humidity, we're not going to see that this weekend or next week. But if we do get that to happen again, then the wildfire risk is going to be a little bit more enhanced as well. So just something from a resource standpoint to think about as we move into the next month. So as far as the summary goes, the biggest thing, like I talked about, is just these persistent east winds pushing some water onshore. So we'll have these minor coastal flooding issues, and then we'll also have some of the marine issues, especially offshore, for anybody that's going to be going out there, like I said, shrimpers or something like that. It's kind of in some smaller craft that may see some issues and may fall into distress. And again, no tropical impacts are expected over the next 7 days. So outside of that, the marine impacts and coastal flooding impacts, it's really going to be excellent weather the entire week, which is great news. So everybody enjoy these fall conditions. And that's it from my end. So does anybody have any questions? And I'll stop recording here real quick.